Jennifer's confession. I never thought I'd find myself here at 53, sitting on my balcony of Deo, her looking downtown Portland, writing about a love that changed everything. The rain taps gently again. Saint the railing, creating that familiar Pacific Northwest symphony I've grown to cherish. My coffee's gone cold, but I can't bring myself to move. Some stories need to be poured out in one sitting, and this one, this unexpected chapter of my life, deserves nothing less. It's been 18 months since I left Mark. 25 years of marriage dissolved into boxes and paperwork. He wasn't a bad man, I need to make that clear. We simply grew apart, slowly drifting into different orbits until we were just two people sharing the same address, raising the same children, sleeping in the same bed without truly seeing each other. The silence between us had become so loud that I couldn't hear myself any more. Our therapist called it emotional disconnection, such a clinical term for the hollow ache that had settled in my chest. Mark was always focused on securing our future, climbing the corporate ladder, providing for our family. I admired his dedication, but somewhere along the way, I became their item on his to-do list, a responsibility, not a passion. By the time the kids left for college, the house echoed with all the conversations we never had. "We can make this work, Jen," he'd said. I finally found the courage to tell him I wanted out. His voice was steady, pragmatic, as if I'd presented him with a challenging business problem. "We've built a good life together." A good life. Not a passionate one, not a deeply connected one, just good. And after 5 decades on this earth, I finally realized good wasn't enough anymore. My downtown apartment became my sanctuary, floor to ceiling, isling windows that welcomed the Portland skyline into my living room. No lawn to maintain, no facade to uphold for the suburban neighbors. Just me, my camera, my paintbrushes, and the intoxicating fro. Edom to rediscover the woman who'd been hibernating for decades. My daughter Ellie worried. "Mom, are you sure about this? Living alone at your age?" My age. As if 53 made me ancient, fragile. Zrina, incapable of starting over. My son James was more understanding, having witnessed the slow ration of his parents' connection. "You deserve to be happy, Mom," he'd said, helping me hang art in my new place. "Both of you do." I spent the first 3 months exploring Portland like a tourist. Despite having lived just outside the city for most of my adult life. I wandered through Powell's bookstore, losing track of time, sampled coffee from every local roaster, and filled memory cards with graphs of street murals and rain-slicked streets. My marketing job at the design firm kept me busy during the week, but weekends became adventures of self-discovery. I joined a photography club, took a pottery class, and learned that I actually enjoyed going to restaurants alone with just a good for company. The loneliness would hit in waves. Not every day, not even most days, but on random evenings when the city lights blurred through my windows, and I caught myself reaching for the phone share a thought with someone who wasn't there anymore. Dating apps seemed absurd. The profiles of and my age all fishing trips and golf clubs, the conversations stilted and full of emotional baggage that mirrored my own. I wasn't looking for a replacement husband. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for. That Saturday at Portland Market started like any other weekend ritual. My camera around my neck, comfortable shoes, a light rain jacket, despite the June forecast promising sun. The market is alive with colors and sounds, vendors calling out to passers-by, musicians playing on corners. I photographing a flower stand when I noticed the jewelry booth across the way. The pieces caught my eye first, silverwork with organic patterns that seemed to capture the spirit of the Northwest. But then I saw him, and something shifted imperceptibly in the universe. He was arranging a display of earrings, completely absorbed in his work. Dark hair with the slightest touch of silver at the temple. Strong hands moving with surprising delicacy over his creations. When he looked up and our eyes met, I felt an unfamiliar flutter in my chest. Something I hadn't experienced in so long, I almost didn't recognize it. These are beautiful, I said, picking up a pair of silver earrings with intricate spirals that reminded me of fern fronds unfurling in spring. Thank you, he replied with a smile. T. Had reached his eyes. I make them myself. My name's Ben. I'm Jennifer, I responded, suddenly a what? Of the camera hanging around my neck, my unmade face, the gray I'd been allowing to reclaim my burn hair. I love how you've captured the city's vibe in your designs. It's very Portland. His laugh was warm, genuine. That's the idea. I've lived here most of my life. It's in the air, you know. W? You can't help but be inspired by it. We talked about his process, about my photography, about Shio, how the market had changed over the years. He was articulate and passionate about his craft, and I on myself lingering at his booth far longer than I'd intended. Customers came and went, but between sales, our conversation continued as if uninterrupted. There was something disarming about him, an authenticity that made me forget to be self-conscious. Would you like to grab coffee sometime? He asked as I finally prepared to leave. There's this great little place near Alberta Arts District that roasts their own beans. I hesitated, suddenly aware of the lines around my eyes, the years that surely showed on my face. I should probably tell you I'm 53, I blurted out, immediately, regretting my candor. His expression didn't change. I'm 37, he replied simply. And so. I'll enjoy interesting conversations over good coffee. No pressure, just coffee. I gave him my number. Before I could talk myself out of it. Walking away from his booth, I felt lighter somehow. As if shed another layer of the person I'd been pretending to be for years. We met at the coffee shop, following Wednesday. I'd changed outfits 3 times, settling on a simple blue dress that had always said brought out my eyes. Ben was already there when I arrived, casually dressed in jeans and a button-down shirt, looking completely at ease. We ordered our drinks and found a quiet table. So, tell me about your photography, he prompted. And just like that, we fell into conversato. Ion again. He asked thoughtful questions, listened intently to my answers, and shared stories about his journey as an artist. I learned he'd been a corporate graphic designer before quitting 5 years ago to pursue his passion for metalwork. He spoke about the risk and the struggle with refreshing honesty. Everyone told me I was crazy to leave a stable job, he said, running a finger around the rim of his mug. But I couldn't face another decade of designing logos for products I didn't believe in. I understood that feeling more than I could express. The quiet desperation of living a life that fits like clothes bought for someone else. When I told him about leaving Mark, about starting over, at 53, there was no judgment in his eyes, just recognition. That takes courage, he said. Most people never find the strength to change, even when they're unhappy. One coffee date turned into dinner the following week. Dinner led to a Sunday spent wandering through the Japanese garden, watching how the light filtered through the maple leaves. He showed me his studio in a converted house space shared with other artists, and I showed him my favorite spots to photograph the city Line. We moved slowly, carefully, like people testing ice on a frozen lake. I was hyper-aware of the age gap, of how his life was still full of possibilities, while mine felt like it was narrowing. But, when we were together, those concerns seemed to fade into background noise. He made me laugh in a I hadn't in years. He noticed things about me, how I always stirred my coffee counterclockwise. I tilted my head slightly when composing a photograph. Small details that Mark had stopped seeing decades ago. The first time Ben kissed me was after an art exhibition in the Pearl District. We'd spent the evening admiring installations that challenged conventions of space and light. And afterward, мы прошлись по дождливой погоде, которая только началась. The streets glistened under the lamplight, and the air smelled of wet pavement and possibility. He stopped beneath the shelter of a shop awning, and turned to face me. I'm falling for you, Jennifer, he said, his voice low and certain. And I think you might be falling for me too. Before I could respond, could throw up the walls of Rizos and ask why this wouldn't work. He leaned down and kissed me, so gently at first, as if asking permission, swinging with growing intensity as I responded. The world around us blurred. All I could feel was his hand cradling my face, the warmth of his body against mine, and a rush of desire so powerful it near lie took my breath away. When we pulled apart, I was trembling, not just from desire, but from fear. Fear of being vulnerable again, of trusting my heart to someone new. Fear of the inevitable judgment from others, my children, my friends, strangers who would see us together and make assumptions. Fear that his interest in me was temporary, a passing fascination with an older woman that would fade. "I'm scared," I admitted, my voice barely audible above the patter of rain. "I know," he said, brushy, nung a strand of hair from my face. "So am I, but I'm more scared of not finding out where this could go." That night, I didn't invite him back to my apartment, and he didn't press. We were both navigating uncharted waters, and some currents couldn't be rushed. But as I lay in bed alone, I could still feel the imprint of his lips on mine, the awakening of parts of myself I thought had gone dormant, or ever. Over the next few months, our relationship deepened in unexpected ways. Ben wasn't just Fies, Ikely present. He was emotionally available in a way Mark had never been. He asked about my day and truly listened to the answer. He encouraged my photography, even suggesting I submit pieces to a Cal Gallery showcase for emerging artists. "You're emerging at 53? He said with a grin. "What?" And I protested the label. The first time I brought him to Sunday dinner with my children was an RCIs in anxiety management. I told them I was seeing someone, but had strategically omitted details. LS about Ben's age. Ellie's eyes widened slightly when she opened the door to find him standing beside me, a bottle of wine in hand and an easy smile that did little to disguise his youth. "It's I feel to meet you," she said, recovering quickly, ever the diplomat like her father. James was more I wrecked, pulling me aside in the kitchen, while Ben chatted with Ellie's husband in the living room. He's younger than I am," he whispered, concern etched on his face. "By 2 years," I replied, sighing myself with the salad to avoid his gaze. "And I didn't plan this, James. It just happened." Are you sure he's not just—" "Don't," I interrupted, finally meeting his eyes. "Don't reduce this to something tawdry. Ben is kind and genuine and makes me happier than I've been in years. I've spent most of my adult life trying to make everyone else happy. Please let me have this." The tension said somewhat over dinner, as Ben charmed them with stories about a metalworking disaster that had Raleigh burned down his studio and asked thoughtful questions about their lives and careers. By dessert, Caesarina, even James had relaxed enough to laugh at Ben's self-deprecating humor. As we left, Ellie hugged me, tightly, and whispered, "I haven't seen you this happy in forever, Mom. That counts for something." It counted for everything. 6 months into our relationship, I finally invited Ben to stay the night. I'd been hesitant, not just because of the intimacy it represented, but because my body carried evidence of 53 years of living, gravity's effects, the softness around my middle, the Aryan scar from Ellie's difficult birth. I'd never felt particularly beautiful, even in my youth, and the idea of being vulnerable with someone new terrified me. "We don't have to do anything you're not ready for," Ben assured me as we sat on my couch after dinner, the Portland skyline twinkling through off the windows. "I'm perfectly happy just being with you." But I was ready to reclaim a of myself that had been neglected for too long, ready to feel desired again, to express physically what had been growing between us emotionally. When I led him to my bedroom, hands trembling slightly, as I unbuttoned my blouse, his eyes never left mine. "You're beautiful," he whispered, and the reverence in his voice made me believe him. What followed was a revelation. Where Mark had been able and increasingly perfunctory over the years, Ben was attentive and intuitive. He discovered tears of me I'd forgotten existed, awakened sensations I'd convinced myself were lost to youth. There why, as no performance, no pretense, just a genuine connection between two people who had found something unexpected in each other. Afterward, lying in his arms as moonlight filtered through my bedroom blind, D's, I felt a contentment that went beyond physical satisfaction. It was the peace of being truly seen, in, and accepted, of finding connection in a life I'd resigned myself to navigating alone. What are you thinking? Ben murmured against my hair. That I never expected this chapter of my story, I replied, eyed honestly. That I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. He propped himself up on one elbow, his expression serious in the dim light. What do you mean? You're 37, Ben. You could have. Children. Start a family. I'm past all that. Sometimes I wonder what you're doing with me when you sud. Would be with someone your own age who could give you those things. He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on my shoulder. I've never particularly wanted children. He finesse, Sai said. And I've dated women my age, plenty of them. None of them made me feel the way you do. And how's that? I asked, needing to hear it, even as I feared the answer. Like I don't have to pretend, and to be anything other than exactly who I am? His voice was soft but certain. Like I've found one who understands that life doesn't always follow the expected path, and that's okay. You Chelleen. Gee, Jennifer. You've lived enough to know what matters and what doesn't. Do you know how rare the tea is? I didn't have words to respond, so I kissed him instead, pouring into it all the emotions I wouldn't articulate. And for that night, at least, the doubts receded like tide pulling away from show. Life settled into a new normal. Ben kept his own apartment, but stayed with me several nights Eek. We established routines. Sunday brunch at a local cafe, evening walks along the waterfront when weather permitted, quiet nights in with takeout and documentaries. I began to trust the stability of what we were building, even as I marveled at its unexpectedness. Not everyone understood, of course. I lost touch with a couple of longtime friends who couldn't seem to accept my choices. Mark was visibly uncomfortable the first time he encountered Ben while picking up some remaining belongings froze. My apartment, his tight smile and overly firm handshake speaking volumes. My sister Caroline, was the conservative voice in my life, didn't bother to hide her disapproval. It's just so cliché, Jay. She said during one of our monthly phone calls. The divorced woman and her boy toy. Is this ally who you want to be? Her words stung more than I wanted to admit. He's not a boy toy, Caroline. He's a talented artist, a kind man, and he makes me happy. Why isn't that enough? Because happiness based on infatuation doesn't last, she replied, with the certainty of someone who'd been married to the same man for 30 years. When the novelty wears off, what will you have in common? Her question haunted me in quiet moments. Ben and I had different cultural touchstones, different ional experiences. Would our connection weather the years ahead? Or would he eventually tire of me, as I grew older while he remained in his prime? The 16-year gap between us would only become more, I pronounced with time. These fears came to a head on my 54th birthday. Ben had planned a surprise weekend getaway to a coastal bed and breakfast in Cannon Beach. We walked for hours along the shoreline, the iconic Haystack Rock standing sentinel in the distance. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, and as we stood with waves lapping at our feet, I was overcome with both joy and melancholy. What's wrong? Ben asked, noticing the tears I couldn't quite hold back. Nothing's wrong, I said, wiping at my cheeks. It's just, I keep waiting for you to realize that I'm getting older every day, that this gap between us will only grow wider, that someday you'll look at me and wonder what you're doing with a woman who's collecting Social Security while you're still in your prime. Ben's expression softened. He took my hands in his thumbs rubbing gentle circle. S on my skin. Jennifer, do you know what I see when I look at you? I shook my head, afraid to speak. AK. I see a woman who had the courage to reinvent herself when most people would have resigned themselves to quiet dissatisfaction. I see creativity and passion and wisdom. I see someone who makes me want to be better, to live more authentically. He paused, his blue eyes holding mine. I don't care about the years between us. I care about the years ahead of us. He reached into his pocket and lead out a small box. My heart stuttered. This isn't a proposal, he said quickly, opening the box, to reveal a silver ring with a design that mimicked ocean waves. Not yet, anyway. It's a promise. A promise that I'm in this for the long haul, whatever that looks like. I looked at the ring, then at his face, so open, so certain. In that moment, the voices of doubt, Caroline's, society's, my when, seemed to fade beneath the sound of the waves and the beating of my heart. I love you, I said, perhaps for the first time, without qualification or fear. I love you too, he replied, slipping the ring onto my right hand. Age and all. That night, as we lay tangled together in the B&B's four-post stair bed, I allowed myself to fully embrace the possibility of a future with Ben. Not as a temporary diversion or midlife crisis, but as a genuine partnership built on mutual respect and affection. We talked about dreams neither of us had voiced before, of possibly opening a joint gallery showcasing both his metalwork and my photography, of traveling to places neither of us had seen, of building a life neither of us had imagined before finding each other. Looking back now, sitting on my balcony, as Portland wakes around me, I realized that leaving Mark wasn't just about escaping an emotionally run marriage. It was about creating space in my life for unexpected joy, for the courage to say yes to possibilities I never saw coming, for the wisdom to recognize that sometimes the most beautiful chapters come later in the story, when you least expect them. Ben is still sleeping inside, his arm outstretched across the empty space where I should be. In a few hours, we'll meet James and his new girlfriend for brunch. Ellie and her husband are expecting their first child next month, making me a grandmother even as I navigate this unconventional romance. Life is complex and messy and doesn't it into neat categories, but it's also rich with second chances and unexpected turns. I don't know what the future holds. Perhaps Caroline is right, and someday the differences between us will become too great to bridge. Perhaps the novelty will wear off, and we'll drift apart as Mark and I did, though, in different ways. But I refuse to let fear of what might happen rob me of the joy of what is penning now. This much I know for certain. At 53, I thought my story was winding down. I found myself in the middle of the most surprising, most authentic chapter yet. And whatever each happens next, I will always be grateful for the man who taught me that it's never too late to rewrite your ending. The rain has stopped now. The city is bathed in the soft light of early morning. Everything washed clean and new. I should go inside, slip back into bed beside Ben, feel his arms wrap around me as he stirs awake. But I wanted to capture this moment, these thoughts, this overwhelming attitude for second chances, and the courage to take them. Some love stories are worth waiting 3 years to begin.